Oh, this is cool!
Well, I didn't expect this matchup, and neither did you. See, I've done a few of these universe comparisons already, and they either tend to be a bit outmatched or totally one-sided. Comparing things like Halo or Star Wars with a universe like Warhammer 40k, which is just so over the top by its very nature, makes these things very difficult. But today, I actually find these two militarized armies quite similar, an authoritarian regime that lies to its own people and uses war for their own gain, creating worse enemies for themselves down the line, born from the conflicts that they started. The COG, or Coalition of Ordered Governments, who conscript prisoners and breed teenage girls in a desperate attempt to cling on to survival. Yeah, they're pretty fucked up. Versus the Helldivers, who enlist idealist citizens that they will send to their unwitting deaths. These are both very bleak organizations that seem to care more about control or superiority than the human lives that they employ, which makes them perfect to throw at one another. Also, quick note, I originally wrote this script before Helldivers turned a planet into a black hole, so that's not really going to come up during the whole video, but as a little preface here, I'm just letting you know it doesn't exist for this purpose, or otherwise, it would drastically change the outcome.
Open Arms program may have given you our uniform, but you and I remain enemies.
Fine. Let's settle this like enemies then.
Hey, that's enough!
Now, how would a conflict like this come about? Well, first we need to set up the battlefield. The largest difference between the Coalition and Super Earth is that one exists on a single planet, while Helldivers patrol the entire galaxy. There are no concrete numbers for each of these, but we can get a good estimate. For Helldivers, we can take the number of active players in the game, 458,709 based on all-time peaks for Helldivers 2, which gives us just over 450,000 destroyers in service at any one time. The maximum reinforcements for a squad in Helldivers is 24, or 6 Helldivers per destroyer. Now, this would not make sense given that we see way more than 24 frozen divers on a single destroyer, but we can attribute that maximum 24 number and apply it across our all-time peak for a total of 11,009,016 Helldivers, or roughly 10 times the size of active duty service members for the US military. Now, this is going off the in-game limitations, but without any concrete numbers, this is the closest we can come to. The closest I'm going to get to. Which may seem small for a galactic force, but remember, these are not the grunts of Super Earth. This number brings us to 10 times the size of the current active US military, but that's everyone across all 5 branches. Okay, 6. So we're not talking 11 million soldiers to defend a couple hundred planets, we're talking 11 million special operations soldiers. Comparing this to the United States, we could compare them to the 2,450 active duty Navy SEALs, meaning for special operations, Super Earth is larger by a magnitude of 4.5 thousand in comparison, which feels a lot better. So Helldivers are gonna be just over 11 million troops. How many gears are there? We don't have any concrete numbers out there, so most of what we can do is compare it to real-world counterparts we know of. At least the COG is one group on the planet, making this much easier for us to count. Now, I'll be honest, when I was trying to find concrete numbers for the COG, I kept running into this handsome devil on Reddit posting a couple of years ago, stranded during COVID isolation. So thank you for the math, sir. And I'm gonna go with it, because I trust him. If we take the maximum population that Earth is estimated to support, around 10 billion people, and count that as the population of Sarah, this can help us get an estimate on the total number of people in the Gears universe. But the COG is only one half of the world's superpowers. Specifically, the Coalition of Ordered Governments are a direct enemy of the Union of Independent Republics. Now, a funny thing about the COG and UIR is even though most of the coalition we see in cities like Ephyra and Jacinto, it's very clearly based on the Western world with Greco-Roman architecture and a capitalist economy, government-wise, it's much closer to the USSR. In the COG, most of the countries lose their autonomy. Their resources, bodies, and control was funneled upward towards the coalition en masse with a focus on collectivism and nationalism, while the UIR, as the name implies, was made of a series of independent nations that chose how, what, and where they would act within the Union. even as Groznia led the charge. So in practicality, the UIR acts more like the Gears universe version of NATO, even though it's incredibly inspired culturally by Eastern Europe by the accents, names, and designs of UIR soldiers. Or things like how they use the term cosmonaut, specifically something attributed to the USSR, and of course the name is the same minus the word Soviet. All that being said, the way that places in the UIR operate seem to be less of a collective compared to the COG. Not saying that one side is better than the other, as the UIR very much did commit a slew of war crimes during the Pendulum Wars. But now we're getting off topic. Basically, the COG is very much totalitarian, so I'm going to use the numbers we have for Russia and China rather than the US, which based on numbers in 2024 would put them around 3.5 million active service members total. If we adjust this for a population that's 2 billion stronger, or about 25% larger, we get a grand total of 4,375,000 gears, at their full might, right around the end of the Pendulum Wars. Now, right off the bat, it looks way in the advantage of the Helldivers. Based on these speculative numbers, there's almost 3 times as many Super Earth democracy fighters than there are gears. But we need to establish the arena and the kit of these armies too. So before we delve into the bullet calibers and orbital weaponry, let's set up this planetary defense. 4 million gears, defending Sarah from roughly 400,000 super destroyers invading into the world. Roughly 10 gears to a single destroyer. Can they do it?
Become a hero. Become a legend. Become a Helldiver.
Helldivers are tough soldiers. A single man can take on thousands of termitids and automatons on their own. Sometimes. The average lifetime expectancy for a Helldiver is about 2 minutes, because at the end of the day, these unwitting soldiers are merely a means to an end. Super Earth uses these dumb, proud patriots to play SNES minigames on the ground so that destroyers, SEAF units, and other planet-side defenses can do the real work. Helldivers can do a lot on their own, but without stratagems, their effectiveness is drastically diminished. Most divers are going to be equipped with a Liberator, resembling the SA-80 bullpup rifle sported by the UK's armed forces, a Breaker 12-gauge shotgun, and the Peacemaker 9mm pistol, along with a litany of rocket launchers, quasar cannons, and a set of automated turret systems. Now, are Helldivers dangerous? Obviously. Are they the toughest soldiers ever? Not quite. We still see Helldivers taken out by single shots, long falls, and their own flamethrowers. And let's not even mention the mech suits made out of paper mache. For the most part, Helldivers are standard soldiers that you would expect with semi-advanced weaponry like specialized heavy weapons and slightly more advanced laser weapons. But for the most part, nothing really that special. The strongest the Helldiver kit gets is the orbital and Pelican-based ordnance that they can deploy on the battlefield, from the not-quite Hammer of Dawn, to massive Gatling guns, to ICBMs, to 500-kilogram bombs dropped from above, and turret deployments, Tesla towers, instant minefields, and more. Can all of these extra tools be used to wipe the COG clean off the face of the Earth? Let's find out.
This is the day we take the battle to the heart of the enemy. This is the day that we correct the course of human history. This is the day we ensure our survival as a species. Soldiers of the COG, my fellow gears, go forth and bring back the hope of humanity!
Now, gears are much more special. Now, you might think that based on examples like Marcus, Clayton, or the Coltrane, that humans on Sarah are genetically predisposed to using Tren at the gym, but actually the massive size of some gears was a byproduct of battling the Locust. See, most gears are not massive mountains of protein powder and steroids. Most are actually just regular people, and this was the case for everyone before E-Day. This is even the case for a unit like Cole, who was much smaller earlier in the war, like when we see him in Judgment. We see just how different the gears that fought the Locust were in the book by Karen Travis called The Slab. when Marcus goes to a military prison and sees prisoners who have been locked behind bars from before the Locust Wars, while he himself had been on the front lines for a decade. Most are shocked, fearful, even scared of such a hulking mass of man walking into the prison. They're caught totally off guard. So if we're taking Gears near the end of the Pendulum Wars, we're also taking them before the extreme prevalence of roids was being used by the soldiers.
Shit.
Before the Lancer Mark II, disparity Helldivers from especially brutal deaths, and before the Locust roamed the surface. Right in that sweet spot after the ceasefire, but before E-Day. And for the most part, the kit of the COG matches the Helldivers quite bar for bar. Pretty standard flak armor, buffed up compared to real-world standards, but still nothing too extreme, like what we see in Spartans or Space Marines. Guns that are souped up, but don't go outside the realms of reality. Heavy-hitting special weapons like flamethrowers, rocket launchers, or even space beams. But the way that gear is used by the COG shows a major difference between Gears and Helldivers right away. The Lancer, even the Mark I, hardly has a stock. Yet Gears wield it as if it had little to no recoil. They fire a 50 cal pistol as if it were nothing, or a 600 nitro revolver like it's a water gun, versus the smallest SMG in Helldivers producing a lot of kickback on their end. Something about this tells me that Gears might just be tougher even on the most bare-bone levels. We're not going to go deep into the COG kit, but if you're interested, check out the small series of videos I did in the past going over each and every infantry weapon in the Gears franchise. One thing that will make the COG's arsenal a bit more dangerous is a volatile fuel on Serra known as emulsion. If you're familiar with Gears, that's the glowing yellow oil. But emulsion is so much more than traditional fossil fuels. Not only is it so potent that just standing in a pool of emulsion can burn you alive, but the COG slapped this miracle fuel into every weapon they could. The chainsaw and the Lancer, emulsion fumes. The lightmass missile, emulsion. The Hammer of Dawn, emulsion. Bushkas and almost every single Locust weapon, emulsion. This is not just an explosion, but an explosion on ketamine that leaves corrosive debris and fires with the force of an equally sized nuclear payload without the fallout. Of course, bombs more powerful than nuclear in the form of light mass. Robots that can shock and kill enemies. Although I do think that jackbots are going to be more advanced than the guard dogs featured by the Helldivers, with cloaking tech and an onboard AI that is seemingly self-sufficient on the field, relative to the guard dogs who cannot discern between friend and foe. But the COG also have a lot more industry on their side. Massive armored vehicles from armadillos, centaurs, assault derricks, and ravens, all of which can outclass the Helldiver variant. Yes, the Pelican might be able to outplay a single Raven, but centaurs and other tanks sported by the COG could sit the Freedom Mech suit down in a single shot. We see centaurs bring down a Brumach, essentially a T-Rex with guns, down in only 3 rounds. Or mounted miniguns that tear through Brumachs all the same. The most important part of this war is going to be whether or not the COG could be bringing down destroyer ships. Going right from our own world, the total number of military-based satellites in orbit right now ranges from 200 to 250 at any time between Russia and China, who I'm using as an example here since I used them for the troop estimates. If we up the 25% bonus, we'll just call it an even 300 Hammer of Dawn units in orbit above Serra. Meaning if Gears wanted to use the Hammer of Dawn to take out destroyers, each unit would have to destroy 1,500 destroyers each, just to level the playing field. But with no defenses from above, there's nothing stopping the divers from sniping the hammer units from afar and closing in, blocking out the sky with their immense fleet of ships. Now, would they be impregnable? Definitely not. As I said before, the COG does have access to a lot of other options when it comes to warfare. Light mass missiles that act like nuclear bombs minus the fallout. Gigantic cannons that can clean the face off of a mountain. And if we're at this point in the timeline, one of the smartest minds in the Gears of War universe is alive in the form of Adam Phoenix. A man who could develop an off switch for the Locust and possibly could make lots of headway when it comes to taking out these ships. but that's more speculation. Not to mention the Helldiver ships already get taken down pretty often by the automatons, who are not shown to have any weapons on par with the cog so far. Things like gigantic cannons akin to what we see on the map Glory would do well at bringing a couple ships down for good.
Welcome to the big sock, Sergeant Phoenix. You ready to hit the road? You know it. Well, let's go chunk some bullets at them grubs.
The biggest difference is going to be if Gears can kill Helldivers fast enough. Like we talked about before, Helldivers are not exactly the greatest. They're expected to die within minutes. Super Earth's divers are effectively just terminals that make it possible for the destroyers to target and attack things on the ground. Otherwise, there would be no need for divers on the front against a foe like Terminids. Now, Gears die, but not nearly as often as Helldivers. They die quick against the Locust, but those are genetically bred super soldiers designed to be as lethal as possible. Helldivers are getting bodied by automatons left and right, not to mention the cultural differences. Gears are well-trained, well-equipped soldiers. They have a boot camp, regular training, and work effectively as a team. They had a blood sport that was banned for being too barbaric in the modern day and replaced it with the most lethal form of football ever imagined. Helldivers are given a 10-minute tutorial and told to get out there to fight the good fight. So what's the ratio? How effective do Gears need to be to scrape out a victory? Well, based on the population size we came to earlier, each Gear needs to kill only 2.5, maybe 3 Helldivers in order to win this out. In my opinion, the COG against Helldivers is an order of quality over quantity. Helldivers are a dime a dozen, expected to die within minutes when they hit the ground, whereas Gears get proper training and can hold off hundreds of grubs for years on end. Hell, even the regular non-military folk of Serra would go on to fight the Locust for years. The biggest advantages for Super Earth is if they could team up with the UIR's remnants, but once the Locust emerge, I don't think they'd stand a chance against them either.
Get out of here. We gotta get fucking out of here, man.
Oh my god.
Unless they turn Serra into a black hole, which I did not expect to come from the Helldivers side. Really put a hampering on all the speculation I had done here. Oh well. I mean, but if they couldn't do that, Super Earth could only send armada after armada. They can even take out all of the Hammer of Dawn satellites. But as far as I'm concerned, this is one major order that the Helldivers just can't pull off. Made even worse when Sony gets in the way or Arrowhead nerfs all of their guns. And this is it for the video. Let me know down below who you think would squeak out this victory. I'm fairly confident in the COG's ability of, like I said, quality over quantity, but the black hole thing certainly made this a lot more complicated than it was when I set out to make this video. Anyways, that's all for me. Thank you very much for watching. And also, our Colorful World charity stuff is still up. Grab a t-shirt. Donate to the GoFundMe. Every purchase goes to the Oklahoma City food bank. So thank you very much if you're able to do that. But that's all from me. Remember to stay cool, have fun, and be awesome. Buster out.